I was aware that like I was the source that made all these things. And so all of these things were me. And that's why I had so much control over it. And then I had like a revelation.
Today we've got Shane. I find Shane's story pretty interesting. We'll just jump into it. Let me tell us who you were and like what was life like before your experience.
Okay. Um, so I was a young adult, had been just out of high school for a handful of years. Wasn't really doing much with my life. I was just partying a bunch, hanging out with friends, working at a tattoo shop, and just outside of tattooing, I was just running amok, going to different cities. Every other weekend, we were at a different city party. We were just, living it up as young kids do. I was not religious, did not hang out with my family much. I was living that kind of life where you're kind of like on the run from something, but you don't know what you're running from. You're just like looking for chaos and fun. And I wasn't religious. I was more agnostic at the time. I'd have conversations about God with my friends, but I was not set on any belief. None of us were. It was just kind of like a rambunctious bunch. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Just living that fast life, tattooing and partying.
All right, take us into like what how did we get into this scenario? Like what happened and then take
Okay,
us into your.
so I was at a house party of one of my friends, and there was a lot of us there. It was like 40 people at this party, and I was there also with my girlfriend at the time. But we had like this weird on and off relationship, right? So we could be together at 1 minute and then not together the next, and that's just how it was. And it sucked because we were like the obvious drama to the group, where everybody knew that if me and her were showing up to a party, it was something crazy was going to happen. And and so it was just a normal house party on the outskirts of my hometown in Red Bluff here in California. And it was it was like in I think it was like in 2014, so I would have been 20 years old. And at this party, we would try to be as responsible as we could. And so me and this girl, we would go collect everybody's house keys up and put them all in a basket and stick them on top of the freezer, just as kind of like you know, to hope to keep everybody safe so nobody would get wasted and drive around. But um, later in the party, me and that my girlfriend at the time get into an argument, and she wants to leave. She wanted to leave to go to a different party, but everybody's house keys were collected. And so I was kind of like playing like the bridge troll by the fridge, trying to make it to where nobody would get their house keys so they'd drive off. And I don't know, I got distracted or something, but her friend grabbed her house or her car keys rather. And they went outside and got in her car and went to drive off. And somebody had yelled at me like, "Hey, they're leaving." They knew that I would have a problem with that, and so I ran out there. And at this time, it was just then and me. And I hopped on the hood of her car, hoping that she would like just sit still and I could like talk some sense into them to get back out of the car or whatever. I was standing on the hood of her car. And after like trying to talk sense, I was probably just screaming at him, but I was trying to talk sense into him to stop, to not drive, um, just to keep him safe. And then also, I was just angry that my girlfriend was leaving, honestly. But um, I heard out the window. My girlfriend looked at her friend and was just like, "Just hit the gas, just drive. He'll get off the car." And her friend decided to floor it instead of just like casually drive and try to bump me off the car. She hit the gas and started to go like very, very fast. She was at least going 20 plus, 20 miles an hour or more. And I was trying to hang on to like the windshield wipers, and she's like swerving in the street trying to knock me off the car, but she's going so fast. I'm like screaming at her to slow down. Like, I'll get off the car, just slow down. She's being nuts. And in the midst of her like swerving, my hand slipped and I went off the front corner of the car and she ran over my leg, and I like fumbled and rolled and flopped into the ditch on the side of the road. And I looked down at my leg, and it instantly swelled so much that my skinny jeans were ripping. The sides of the threads on my jeans were torn, and I could see my leg, and it was just swollen. Like there was no blood or nothing, so I knew it was like internal damage. But that was probably one of the like the. There's many moments in my life where I can like compare how much pain I was in, and that was probably one of the worst. And I found out later that I tore my ACL and my MCL in my knee, and so that's why it was swollen so bad. But I was about like 100 yards away from the house down in the ditch, and nobody was outside. Nobody knew that this happened, and so I needed to get back to the house. And for some reason in my head, I was just super afraid that the road that they were driving down was a not through street, and so they had to turn around to get back to the main road. And I was like, dude, if I don't make it to the house, in my mind, I'm telling myself this: if I don't make it back to the house before they turn around, she's gonna run me over again. You know what I mean? I was like, I was in fear for my life pretty much. But so like quickly army crawled as fast as I could back to the house. And a bunch of people ran outside and they were like, what the fuck just happened? They seen that I was just like crying, sobbing. My leg looked like a fucking chicken wing. It was bad. And so a ton of people ran out into the road because they knew that they had to turn around and come back as well. And so they kind of like created like this barricade in the street so that they couldn't pass by. And she drives up to them and stops. And they're all like yelling at him to get out of the car. You just ran Shane over. Like you need to be accountable for this. You know what I mean? Like we're calling an ambulance. Like you need to get out of the car. And she kept doing that weird thing where you like gas it and brake it to try to move people out of your way. And she ended up bumping one of my other friends in the leg. And they all knew that she had just ran me over. So they weren't having it, and it immediately turned into this chaos where people were throwing like bricks and rocks at her car and breaking her windows, and people were hitting her doors with bats, and they reached in and pulled them out of the window. Like it was this a wild situation. And since me and my girlfriend at the time already had tension, there was like this weird like the jocks versus the metal kids vibe going on where like all of their friends were there and all her friends' boyfriends were there, and then all of my homies were there. And so it turned into this huge brawl where the girls are fighting the girls and the guys are fighting the guys. And I ended up having one of my friends pick me up and hobble me out there because everybody was fighting. And for one, I wanted to keep my girlfriend at the time safe. And then for two, I was angry. So I wanted to fight. And I did what I could to like hobble my ass out there on one leg. And before I could really get into the mix of anything, somebody came up to me. I don't know who it was. I don't know if one of my friends was trying to keep me safe or if it was one of the other dudes that we were fighting. But he just like almost immediately came up behind me and put me in a chokehold. And like thinking back, it's like, dude did me a favor because I was damaged. I was like extremely damaged, and I probably would have made it worse if I jumped into a brawl at that time. But I was pissed. I was like seeing red vision. I was just angry, crying, like all of these super, super chaotic emotions all at once. And he puts me in this chokehold. And I'm like trying to hit this dude and doing my best to try to break free from him, but um, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. And he ended up choking me out. But um, he held on for way too long. And so what I experienced was like kind of just like blood boiling anger trying to break free from this dude. I felt like I was being violated pretty much. And then just like instant calm, just from the most chaos and the most anger and the most emotion to just nothing, just quiet. And I was like, in this void where there was nothing, but I was aware that I was there. And there wasn't anything after that outside of what I made it to be. But so there wasn't like a transition. There wasn't like a swoosh or nothing. It literally was just like click, the light switch was off and I was in darkness. And it was just absolutely nothing. It was kind of like the easiest way to explain it is if you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, there's a scene where Neo and Morpheus, I think, are standing in this room and it's just nothing but whiteness. It's just, there's nothing there. There's no dimensional depth. There's no shadows. It's just all white. It was like that, but it was void, black. And I wasn't standing. I didn't have a body. I was just like aware. I could see the void. I could see the darkness, um, but I didn't have a body. And there was nothing else there that was like physical. There was no gravity. There was no temperature. I didn't sense anything other than the fact that I was just conscious. I was aware that I was there. And I didn't have any memories of what had just occurred. So it was almost like brand new. It was like I was like waking up to this, but I didn't know what I was waking up from. And so it was just like pure awareness is the easiest way to explain it. But I didn't feel any emotion other than like being deeply interested almost, like in like, what is this? So it was like an instant switch from super, super angry to just being aware in this void and being kind of like intrigued into what I was experiencing. I didn't remember shit. I didn't remember that I used to be a human. I didn't remember that I had a name. I didn't remember anything. It was just like the only knowledge I had was that I was here. I was here and this was now. And that was it. It's kind of like, but the interest I had was wild. I've looked back on that and I was like, maybe you'll hear later on in the story that I end up creating a bunch of things. And I'm like, maybe that creation comes from that interest, but um, I'll put a pin in that for later. But so I started to be with this like deep interest. I realized that like I could think to myself and my thoughts, I heard them in my head, but I mean, I didn't have a head, but I heard them as English. And so there's a lot of like subtle ties back to like the real world throughout my experience that I realize after the fact. But in the moment, I'm not aware that English is a language or that there's other languages. I'm just thinking, you know what I mean? And so I started to think, and I would think, so for example, I could be like, wow, what is this? And I thought, why does this feel familiar? And I started to realize what the word familiar was and like what the feeling of familiarity was. And that is kind of a hint that there's other experience, right? In that moment, there's like a subtle hint that what I'm experiencing isn't the only thing, but it's all I got right now. But it did feel familiar. And I started to focus on, I noticed when I focused on my thoughts that colors would flash in this void, like kind of like in the night sky when lightning hits, it flashes the whole sky bright. It was like that. If I thought on something specific, it would flash. And so like my thoughts were creating these flashes, which is actually, now that I think about it, this just occurred to me, but your brain, um, when it has these, when you think, you create like biophotons in your head, your neurons, synapse, and it creates like light waves in your mind, which is interesting. So my thoughts were making these flashes happen. And I realized I can control these flashes with what I was thinking. And I started to be able to flash in more than just white. I could flash different colors. And then when I got to like green, it reminded me somehow of like nature vibes. And so I was thinking of a tree. And again, looking back on it, like, I don't know where I had the memory of a tree, but it just occurred. It just seemed to be natural. And so I thought of a tree. And when I thought of a tree deep enough, it would appear. It started to form in front of me. And it's kind of akin to like just visualization. If you shut your eyes and picture a tree in your mind, it's kind of like what it was. But it was so real. And I could take this tree that I was visualizing and I could move it around. I could spin it. It's kind of like creating a character in a video game, but I created a tree and I was like moving it around. I can make it zoom thousands of miles away from me and then zoom back and I could zoom around it. So like I understood that I was in a place where there was 3 dimensions and I was creating things with my thoughts. And so I made that tree and I also realized I could experience the tree. And so I could like become the tree. I could go into the tree and feel like that's when I started to have like senses. I could feel what it was like to be a plant and like experience plant life floating in this void, which was very, very odd. But I started to create tons of things from that point forward. Like I had no other interest or plan or goal other than to just continue to think, continue to make, and see what I can come up with pretty much. And I started to make tons of different like planets and civilizations in this void, and I could travel through this void to all of them. I could bring them to me. Now that I think about it, I don't even know if I would bring them to me or if I would come to them. It's kind of hard to tell the difference, but um, these planets were all similar to Earth, life on Earth. I didn't make anything like Mars or Venus or Jupiter or nothing like that. They were all very similar to Earth, how Earth is with civilizations and stuff. It's just the civilizations were different from different epochs in time, and they're all comparable to like human history from what I was aware of. I didn't know that it had, like in the experience, I didn't know that it had any ties to like human civilization or history. I thought I was just making it naturally. But interestingly enough, there was no animals at all. It was just people, people in nature, just humans in nature. And so I made a bunch of these different civilizations and humans, and they all kind of like, they're comparable to human history. So, like from Sumerian culture all the way up until even future times, what we envision, like in movies like The Fifth Element, where there's like floating cars and buildings and stuff. And so, like, there's a wide variety of these cultures that are all kind of amalgamated into what I was making, what I was creating. And it's like playing. It's like playing God. It's like playing a Sims game, but you're not just designing the people; you're designing the planet they live on as well. Um, and so I was doing this, and I was just flying around, very interested. Almost, I was so interested, I was almost proud of what I did, which is weird to think about, like the emotion of pride in what I created. And I would go in and I would, like I did the tree, I would experience these people's lives for moments. Um, and I did that for, it felt like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I could tell that I could control the time. So like I could look at a planet and I could kind of like fast forward it to where I could see all the civilization bustling and like moving around. And then if I chose to like go in and experience that or like go experience a person that's in that creation, I could slow it down to what they're experiencing. So I had control of everything I made. I had control of how fast the time passed. But the one thing I didn't control was what they experienced time as, which was interesting. So I could go in and I could experience these people's lives. If I wanted to, I could kind of rewind to see when that person was born and I could experience their birth. I could fast forward to their death, experience like them on their deathbed. I could experience all of these things of these people. Um, and doing that for what felt like thousands of years, um, you kind of run out of things to do. I kind of like hit the ceiling or the cap of what I could create and what I could experience in this. I was aware that like I was the source that made all these things. And so all of these things were me. And that's why I had so much control over it. And then I had like a revelation that I wanted to, since I ran out of things to do, I wanted to separate from that. And to do this, I would have to go into a person's life from birth and become ignorant of the fact that I was their creator. I would have to forget that I was the source that they came from, and I would just experience their life fully. And so, as that person. And so, I had that revelation, and I was looking around for someone that I found interesting enough to experience their full life from. And so, I chose this man. He looked like he was weird. He was dressed like an Egyptian, but he lived in a land that looked like Scandinavia. It was a weird mix of things that I'm like heavily interested in real life. So that's, we'll put a note in that too. But all of this kind of like, it all reflected things that I was deeply interested in waking life. And so I chose to experience this man, and I wanted to rewind time to when he was a baby and be him for his birth and experience his entire life. But I knew that if I chose to do that, there's no going back until that man dies. Um, And then I would, return back to source probably, or whatever that man experiences as his death. But right as I chose to experience this dude, I like was swooping in to go into him and experience his consciousness, and my eyes opened and I was jolted awake, and the whole experience of that stopped. It was like just as instant as I went into the experience, I came out of it, and I was laying on the ground, and the EMTs had these fucking wires hooked up to me, and that was that. That was the end of the experience. But um, through talking to the EMTs and my friends that were there, they said that they had to resuscitate me because my heart stopped. I guess the dude that choked me out, combined, with the alcohol and all of the bodily trauma, caused my heart to stop. And I was out for like 25 seconds, I think they said, between 25 and 30 seconds, which wasn't long, but it was enough for them to shock me back alive. And when I came to, it felt as if I was coming back to a body that wasn't mine. It was almost like like when I chose to go experience that man's body in my like created world. That's what it felt like coming back to this body. It felt like I was experiencing a body now that wasn't mine, but it was a piece of a source. You know what I mean? So it was like it's very hard to put into words, but it was like nostalgic coming to a body that I knew came from source, but it's been 5,000 years, and I wasn't experiencing anybody. And I was also confused too, because that's not the man I chose to experience. And so like the choice I made was not the one I woke up in, but it's just very hard to grasp it at that moment. I remember like reaching at my face and feeling, I thought I had a beard because I felt like an old man, but I wasn't. I was 20 years old. I was back in this young body. I was just tore up. And yeah, the whole thing felt like thousands of years passed. And it's just hard. I'm like almost at a loss of words to how to explain it. But slowly memories or like recollections would come back from people talking to me about it. And I started to like, at first I didn't believe them. They're like, dude, you were in an accident. You got ran over and then this dude choked you out. And it was like, okay, that didn't mean nothing to me because I don't remember experiencing that. I was just gone. You know what I mean? I was doing other things for thousands of years. What do you mean? And that wasn't in my experience. I don't know what you're talking about. But slowly it all started to come back. And it took a few hours for me to like remember that I even had a name, or like that I had an identity. And so like there was this weird merging that happened where my identity and all my memories of this life and the occurrence that happened was kind of like slowly morphing back into me. And I'd start to recall all of these things. And I started to remember who my friends were and why I was even at that house to begin with. But it took a while. It wasn't just like immediate. It was like my conscious experience had to mend back with my body, and it took a second. It took a while for me to like remember all that stuff. But the feeling of that place that I was just at being so damn familiar, that stuck with me. And it's never gone away since. Like I said, I wasn't religious at the time, but I've had a long time to think about that as well. And I realized that that's not the first time that I've died. So there's many reasons why it would have felt familiar. I can't say for sure, but I also died when I was a baby. I died when I was born. And if this is something that I will experience when I die again, then I'm assuming it's something that I experienced before I chose to experience this life. And so it could feel familiar for many different reasons, um but yeah, that's how crazy it was. And then I had to fucking hobble around on crutches and do physical therapy for about a year before I could get the function of my leg back. Um didn't seem to have any like deep brain issue or brain trauma problems. My memory was kind of shot for about a handful of years after that. I had like short-term memory loss and stuff, but it all came back to me. I wasn't like permanently damaged. It just took a while for my body to kind of like, yeah, that was me dying.
Did you tell anybody about this?
Yeah, it took me a couple weeks before I said anything to anyone. And it started with just like my closest friends. Um, and they were like in awe about it, but they didn't question me too deeply. So all of like the skepticism about it came from just me immediately. Like I've never had anybody be skeptic about it other than myself. And so, and in sense, like this was um, like close to 15 years ago. So, I mean, I've told this story to many people, and I've had skeptics ask questions, but initially it was just people like just being in awe. Like, no way. That's crazy. But nobody like really questioned it. They kind of just like allowed me to share my experience without, diving too deep into it. And a lot of my friends were also kind of agnostic. They didn't really know, they probably believed in God, but they didn't know what kind or what kind of afterlife experience was to be expected. And so it was just like to them, it was probably just like a campfire story. There's a lot of questions that go into it. Like maybe it was just a neurological event from your brain, from the deprivation of oxygen, the alcohol, cardiac arrest. Maybe it's just a combination of that and it wasn't real. It was just, portrayed to you in your brain. And it's just, I've thought about that, but there's a couple factors, right? The feeling of it being familiar, knowing that I've died more than once is huge to me. Um, the awareness is not like a dream. It's not like I've experienced like astral projection and lucid dreaming in the real life. It's not like that. It was so real. It was almost more real than life is. And so it's to say that it's just like this hyper hallucination doesn't click for me. It just doesn't feel correct. Um, but, there are also factors that go into play that insinuate that because all of these things that I created kind of were a reflection of all of my extreme interests in life, all of these ancient civilizations and the future, and all of these things kind of like reflected things that I'm still very deeply interested in. So, it kind of goes both ways. Like, was it made up in my brain or was it a real experience? I'm not sure, but it felt real.
Did you at the time did you know that other people like had experiences like these? I mean, yours is unique to you, but have you heard of near death experiences at the time? Did you realize that was a thing?
Yeah. Like I knew they could happen, but I wasn't very studied on it. And none of my other friends have ever had one. Um, the only other near death experience that I've heard someone talk about, like shortly after that, was similar, but they experienced that void of nothingness, but that's it. They didn't experience the lights, they didn't experience the creation, and they didn't experience experiencing their creation. It was just void. And so they were kind of they were kind of just like more negative about it. Um, and that specific friend that told me that one, he was an atheist. And so it also begs the question, like, does your beliefs affect what you experience in the next as well? Because he didn't believe in God, so he didn't experience anything when he died. You know what I mean? It was just nothingness. Same type of nothingness that I experienced, but I ended up doing something with that nothingness. And I think that comes from me being agnostic at the time. Like I was a seeker, right? Um, I knew there was more than just nothingness. So I experienced more than just nothingness. But
So I heard you kind of mention it earlier. There's a time difference, right? How long were you out here in the real world, and how long were you gone in that world?
ooh, so I know my heart stopped for like 20 some seconds, but as for being unconscious, I'm not sure. Because they had called the ambulance before I decided to go out there and fight these dudes. So I don't know. I have never gotten clarification on that. On like how long I was like out, and does it matter if I'm just unconscious, or does it matter like just when the cardiac arrest happened? You know what I mean? I don't know if the experience was from the moment I got knocked out or choked out, or did the experience happen from the moment my heart stopped? I'm not sure about that, but I know for sure that it was only like the cardiac arrest was only about a half a minute, a little bit less than half a minute. And then the experience itself, dude, it felt like 5,000 years. Now that I think about it, is like I could kind of fast forward and rewind time for the creation as I wanted, but now that I think about it, it does seem like time for my awareness was still passing. So like the 5,000 years isn't like 4,000 minus a couple hundred because I rewound time. It's like my time continued to pass even though I can control my creation's time. But yeah, it felt like thousands of years.
What's it like being a tree?
um, it felt like a vibration, kind of like, well, not like a vibration. It's sort of like, when you're sitting in a hot tub and the bubbles have been going for so long that your skin almost goes numb. And then you turn the bubbles off and there's like that weird trickling on your numb skin of subtle bubbles. It was like that, with like this deep hum. That deep hum seemed to always be there though. But like that, experiencing it as a tree was like, it seemed like that hum was a part of it. Like the hum was occurring, but it also felt like it was occurring from me as a tree. And it kind of felt like a vibration almost. I couldn't
Did you
move. I didn't want to move. I was just sitting there. I was fully content, just sitting still and vibrating.
no sight?
Oh, you know what? Like so the sight that I experienced was, I mean, obviously it's not like sight from our eyes, right? It's more of like a mind, like you're aware and you can see. And that's how it was in the tree as well. Like I was the tree. That's actually super interesting because if a tree had eyeballs, like human eyeballs, that's where my sight was coming from. It was like up at the top of the tree and I could look down at my branches and I could like look over here to these branches. So it was like, I still had sight. Obviously a tree doesn't have eyeballs, you know what I mean? So it was just like a mental awareness.
Maybe trees have different receptors. If you know if everything's vibration, it can feel and process vibration around it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like
Sort
it
of.
has a different awareness.
Yeah. Almost similar. I think the only thing it'd be comparable to is like someone that's blind their whole life. They can kind of see, but it's a different kind of sight. They go off vibes or feelings or whatever.
So how do you how do you process this back in the real world? Like how do you live with that? How do you go about your day now?
It probably would have been different if I wasn't mangled, if I didn't have an injury. But I was very apathetic to my life at the time to begin with. So the fact that like I had experienced cardiac arrest didn't phase me much. Um, I didn't feel lucky. I didn't feel like I had a new purpose. Not much. Like I was like in a dark place at that time, and so it was just like it was a cool experience. But to me, it was just another party. You know what I mean? At the time, it was just like nothing profound at all. It was just like deeply interesting. I had a cool story to tell, but it was nothing more than that, really. Was very apathetic towards my own life, and I've experienced many things around that time and since where I should have died. And so the majority of my adult life, I've had that feeling, like a weird feeling, like I can't die. Obviously, I know I can, right? But there's a weird feeling in me that's like nothing's letting me die. And so because I was apathetic, it was just like another thing, brushed it off my shoulder and didn't really care about it much. It was
Like
just a
it's
cool
not
minute.
yet your time.
Right.
Someone asked if because many experiencers come back with some like extra sensory gift. Did you come back with any of that?
Um,
You feel other people's emotions. You see dead people, stuff like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, nothing more than, there is one thing more than when I was a child, but leading up to that, I've always like experienced weird paranormal stuff. Like as a child, I was convinced I could see dead people. Not all dead people, but sometimes these spirits would appear to me. And so like I've experienced weird paranormal stuff, but the only thing that was different from that point forward was I could pick up on like what is called a person's aura much more. Like I could walk into a room and I could tell you if there's 10 people in that room, I could tell you what mood they're in. Um, and that's something that like naturally occurs to me. You don't have to die to, to gain that experience of people. But yeah, it was much more from that point forward. I was like, um, before the experience, I was apathetic to the world, right? I didn't really give a fuck. After the experience, I was still apathetic towards myself, but I was much more aware and empathetic towards other people. So I could take their, and that actually led to much more problems. But um, I cared much more about how other people were, what they were feeling, and I could pick up and sense on if they were sad or if they were ecstatic, and I could support them in those ways where I didn't before. And so that's a difference. Is that I had a like a deep wanting to support other people in their emotions, and I could pick up on them. I could also, actually, now that I think about it, I could also get people to kind of open up to me much more. Whereas before I didn't care to talk to people. And maybe it's just because I didn't talk to people much, but from that point forward, I could get people to open up to me like a fucking in like a transparent book. Like I could just get something about me and conversating with people since then. I can get people to just run their lips and just open up about stuff and say things that they would usually keep inside.
So I see you live on TikTok a lot.
Mhm.
What do you do on your lives?
So I've been streaming on TikTok for about a year and a half, just under 2 years, and it's been a so I'm a deep mystic. I study Western esotericism and religion, um, and so it's the streams are about that. I interview other people of different walks of faith. I also study and learn stuff live so people can follow along and learn as well. And then I also am an open book there, and I talk about my experiences through everything. And so I've I've like experienced or practiced like a neo-pagan path, spirit, like type of spirituality, and my TikTok has shown how that kind of changes through time. It's just like on during my live streams, I just want to show, I want to put on Front Street the evolution of how I am in my faith and my spirituality and my beliefs and my experiences, while also giving other people a platform to open up about theirs. And religion is a hot button issue, so it oftentimes turns into like heated debates, and there's a lot of crazies. But then again, I'm also just as crazy. You know what I mean? Like I still kind of believe in leprechauns, and so like I'm no different than any other religious folk. But I actually, interestingly, just got baptized a couple weeks ago. Planning on getting married soon, and so we're doing it like the biblical way. But my TikTok is for that. It's to show the transformation that I'm like going through, the cycle of faith that I'm going through, as well as like offering a place for other people to open up and ask questions.
What do you think? Um, what is your definition of the meaning of life?
I think it's relative to the individual. Um, if you had to reduce it to just a base level, what would be the same for everyone? I think we all serve a purpose, but it's the same purpose that nature itself serves. It seems like we live in this place. It's a duality, right? It's a pull and it's a push and a pull. Um, and so like everything in this experience seems to be it seems you can reduce it down to two things, which is like positive, negative, good, and evil, push and pull. And this is evident. There's receipts for this all throughout nature and all throughout like how we experience emotionally. And so like the meaning of life at its base would just be um, to serve your place in that balance of chaos and order. But anything past that would be relational it'd be circumstantial to the individual. Um, I have a lot of conversations on like what is truth objective or subjective, and it depends on what kind of truth you're talking about. Obviously, mathematics is different than religion, but I think truth or meaning is mostly relative to the person. It's going to change depending on who you ask.
Is there anything that you want to add to this um, episode, this podcast, to the conversation? Is there anything you want to speak on?
Yeah. So if you come to the realization that you do play a part of that balance, of that chaos and that order in this world, um, I think, I mean, I can only speak for myself and people I know, but I think we oftentimes come to this realization that good is better. You know what I mean? That like love and acceptance and compassion is always better. So like in serving, in having to choose, if you're on a fork in the road and you're having to choose like whether to choose the chaos or the order, and there's something inside of you, like deep inside of you, telling you to love or be compassionate or be empathetic or to be a peacemaker on earth. Follow that. Um, now, I do believe there's other people that they're destined for opposite things because both are kind of necessary to keep the balance going, to keep evolution of everything going. But if there's something inside of you that's drawing you to something, like for me, recently it's been Christ and Christianity, and so I followed that. Like just follow your gut feeling fearlessly, especially if it leads you to doing peaceful stuff, to becoming a peacemaker for your community, to because we all kind of as far as I understand it, we all kind of experience and our consciousness affects the world of other people, but your experience and your consciousness is also influenced and affected by other people. And so we're all in this together pretty much. Like if we had a puddle that was sitting still and every human had a pebble that represented their consciousness or their influence on the world, and we just dropped them all in the puddle at the same time, the ripple effect from one pebble kind of represents your influence on. And so not only are you influencing all the other pebbles, but those pebbles are also reverberating back to you and influencing you. So to put it in a nutshell, it's like we are all mirrors of each other. We're mirrors of our own becoming. And yes, some will fall and some will rise. But that begs the question, are you accountable for that? Are you only accountable for yourself? Or are you realizing that you're also accountable for the rest of the world too? So yeah, that in a nutshell is follow your gut, do it fearlessly, and be transparent about it.
If someone wants to join in on your on your stream and watch what you have to offer, where can they find you?
I'm on TikTok, username Lord and Lady. I don't think there's many other TikTok users with that same name, so it's there. It's got about 10K following. You'll notice it. The user picture is a candle, and I go live like a couple times a week. I try to do it every night, but I'm also I work full time and I am a father, so I do it when I can. But you can find me at Lord and Lady on TikTok.
And I'll tag it in the description for people to find the link to it. Um, I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed your experience. It's super fascinating, obviously, super
Appreciate
unique. Um, if you had one last message for the world, what would it be?
it. Oh. Something about that question just causes me to stump. I've watched a lot of your other clips of other people's messages, and it's like something in me wants to say something so profound, but then I know that once I choose it, I'm going to be like, oh, I should have said this. So I guess I'll just stick to what I already just said. Follow your gut, do it fearlessly, and be transparent about it.
All right, well, this has been great. I appreciate you. Thank you guys for joining us today. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Share out this video to whoever it resonates with. And if you're not on TikTok yet, please come and join us on our TikTok live streams. It's a great place to hear near death experiences every day. These are ordinary people with extraordinary experiences, and you never know what's coming up next. So I encourage you to come join our community over there. It's a very loving place, and we'd love to have you. Also, if you want to teach your children the values of near-death experiences, you can check out The Light You Are on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description. Um, Make sure you love yourself so you can love others. Because when we love others, they can love themselves. And just in case no one's told you today, I love you.